Here you will see how Wikipedia has attempted to classify cycles beginning with a major category, planetary cycles. Now, planetary is now broken into subcycles, the first of which is a list of astronomical cycles. That would seem to fall under planetary. Planetary cycles would be the subject of astronomy. But then next is climate and weather cycles. It might take you a moment, as it took me a moment, to focus on that, evaluating that. Is that a planetary cycle? Yes, Earth is a planet. And therefore, the next major category, completing 3 subcategories of planetary cycles, is geological cycles. Okay, there are a whole lot of cycles listed under each one of these 3 subheadings of planetary cycles. So what would be another example? At the level of planetary, we find out organic. Well, that would not be planetary. That is a little bit more restricted to something on our planet that we could test. And we have then agricultural cycles, such as carbon cycle, crop rotation, phosphorus cycle. These would seem to be chemically related cycles, but that would be part of agriculture. So far, so good. You may disagree or agree with the way this is done, but this is just to give us an example of how we may approach the enormous topic of cycles. So we've completed planetary cycles. We're just going to breeze through organic and let that go. And then physics cycles. Well, we would want some examples of that. We have mathematics of waves and cycles with a whole huge list, which we'll return to when it's time. This is just an example. The electromagnetic spectrum. Well, I suppose we could say that has something to do with cycles. We'll return to that. Sound waves. There is even a term, cycles, used in sound wave analysis. So far, so good. Then we have miscellaneous, which includes economic and business cycles, music and rhythm, political cycles, religious, social, military, and war and literature. That would seem to complete the topic, except if we breeze back up here to the very top, we will see that there's actually just a little bit of information that's added. This is a list of recurring cycles. Okay, I always thought that a cycle implied a recurrence called a period on the cycle. But it says here that we're also referred to the index of wave articles and time and pattern. Time and pattern are a little abstract. I'm not sure I fully can appreciate what's being said there without looking it up. But I think we have a pretty good view, and I would like to offer my own comment on this classificational system, which Wikipedia thinks is a reasonable classification. That is always subject to argumentation because there are various approaches to a classifying system. So this is theirs, and they start out with planetary, okay, organic, and physical. So physical, organic, and planetary. Obviously, that is an encyclopedist's way of classifying what could be called a library consideration of where to put books. I'm not sure that that is even true, but we now wish to compose our own classificational system, which may or may not be better, but at least then we'll have a choice. Planetary cycles, I say, is incorrect. You don't want to say planetary. That is incorrect. Why? I must have something better. Astronomical. Astronomical. The cycles of heaven. And then we can get into the nitty-gritty of how we distinguish, for instance, the cycles of the sun with respect to the earth. Is that astronomical, or is it the other one? And I say there are only 2. There are only 2 levels of cycles. And then we're going to have to add a third. So I'm going to say now that there are 3 classificational headings, top-level headings under the great subject of cycles. However, we're not studying cycles. we're studying one major branch of cycles called natural. What does that imply? Nature. What does that imply? I've already covered that, so I'm going to give you my classificational system, which may be considered arbitrary in the same sense that Wikipedia's classificational approach is arbitrary. You might start with planetary cycles. I say that's ridiculous. No, you don't start with planetary cycles. If you also have organic cycles, you've also made a mistake. And then if you say physics cycles, you're so far off course that you'll never actually understand what you're talking about. So Wikipedia's classificational system for cycles is encyclopedic and inaccurate and of no use to us, except to show us it's possible to go horrendously, hideously wrong right at the start so that you will not gain an efficient approach to understanding. You're confusing yourself and anybody foolish enough to listen to you. So we've considered Wikipedia and discarded it 100%. We do not need Wikipedia, and therefore you and I are now exploring the cutting edge of science, in a very restricted sense, of course, which is the only way you can do it in science. Unless you're doing synthesis, that's exactly what I do. That's the final approach to the solution, without which you're not doing science at all. So what are we trying to find out? I am proposing as my hypothesis, which I will prove, I already have, I'm just going to rehearse the proof to you, is that cycles, if you now say natural cycles, you can use my system, which is perfect. So we'll use my system because it is what is called correct. It is the correct system for analyzing cycles from the point of view of a human being on Earth. That would be the default. That's usually where we start these days, not often. You just start out in Lulu land and see if you can work your way back in. We do not take that approach because you'll get lost and ruin all prospects for getting a solution. What is the solution I propose? Which I would then need to prove. That the cycles of nature are the only way to begin to describe what we call religion. Religion is one of the most distorted terms ever invented by the poisoned mind of man. It's reasonable. It's just as reasonable as Wikipedia's approach to cycles. It's either useful or it's not. So our definitions, I have canvassed the entire field of religion. I have never yet seen an appropriate definition of religion. That would be one that all reasonable men can agree on because it can be proved and it's useful. So you need usefulness and provability. You're now in the realm of rational logic. So what is a cycle of nature? I have two categories for that, which completely agrees with revealed religion. Whether you agree that such a thing exists or not, your opinion in that matter does not matter or count. And so you can keep your mouth shut about revealed religion because you're not included. You either believe in it or you're not a scientist, and you have to believe in the supernatural in order to be a scientist. Maybe your Western PhD mathematicians disagree. I just gave a full series over the past week on why you must never believe anything that white man science declares. Their occupied territory now have nothing to do with what wise men need or want. For the sake of the innocent children, those who are still seeking heaven, however that's being done, it's absolutely required by a human to do that for this reason. Heaven is enormous and the earth is insignificant. Now we turn to my classificational system, which will exfoliate in the correct direction. Only a wise man can say that, because I've reached the end of the cycle. I've accomplished all the solutions necessary to achieve in order to be an accreditable, believable scientist whom you had better listen to, or you're not going to get anywhere. So here is where you must begin according to my approach. Don't forget, you always have the off button, but it's not to turn me off, it's going to turn you off. So go ahead and reach for your denial button if you would like. I have a duty to do, which you may not be able to comprehend, let alone appreciate. So there are two levels or two binary choices. It's either one or the other. If you're looking for cycles, where are those two realms? They are called from time immemorial heaven and earth. And that alone is correct. So that's where we study cycles. The cycles of heaven and the cycles of earth. I add one third one that has been exposed by rational science. And it's abstract, and it's going to end up being extremely important to us. Because we're looking for a synthesis between human religion and human science. I have attempted to define both those terms in a new way such that they make sense in terms of each other, and I am correct. So I know the difference between heaven and earth. Do I? There is an overlap. Why? It's because Earth is a planet. Earth is a planet, which means it's already in heaven. It's a planet. Where do planets exist? They exist in heaven. In heaven. So heaven is the universe. That's heaven. And the kingdom of heaven, a term which you may have run across in some extraneous religious readings that you've since forgotten because it's horseshit to you. Heaven comprises earth. Well, that's interesting, because a book that I respect called Genesis, it's in the Tanakh. It was acquired by the Israeli monitors over 2,000 years ago. It would have to have been considerably longer ago than that. If it's accreditable, it fully is. So what does Genesis say right at the beginning that we may all know about, but it's worthwhile here to just remember? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then the narrative proceeds to describe everything done on earth, with the exception of one day called day 4. It's day 4 out of 7 if you include the rest day that the Lord announced is the 7th day in sequence. That's the day of rest, which he blessed right at the end of his creation sequence. He took a day off. That's how he projects it to us. It's worth considering on that basis alone. See if the Lord knows what he's talking about. That's assuming you believe the narrative. So we have a lot of ifs, but it is the default situation on earth. We do have this narrative. And it is fully validated. I have said so, and therefore it is true, because I am the world's foremost expert on that subject. So if you can believe me, you can believe what I say about the Genesis narrative. If you don't agree, you have the off button. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your attention to what may be the most important lecture you've ever heard in your life. So let's get into it so we can get the answers we need. What is the ultimate basis of religion and science, so that they're one thing, as I have already proved they are. So religion and science are identical, except for where they're different. So how are they identical? You're seeking truth. Well, you're going to need two. There are two truths that must be mastered if you want a full grip on reality. Because we're human, we have 2 points of view that don't get along at all. I'm going to show you, yes, they do. You've just been trained to separate them so that they fight. They're the two halves of yourself. One of them is emotional, and it takes precedence in almost all categories. However, there's one system that catches up and comes online a little bit later than the emotions, although those are always being developed, including love. Love. Love is an emotion. It is not science. Love is not scientific. However, there's a reason we have logic. That's the second subsystem that I've proved completely describes consciousness. And therefore, as I've also proved, completely latches with reality. So reality and consciousness are inseparable. You cannot have one without the other. So we have two sides to the universe in several senses now. We have the heavens, and we have where we're trapped. We're trapped on this little fleck of cosmic dust. And isn't it marvelous, though? The earth sciences, biology, geology, chemistry, finally electrodynamics, the study of light itself, the study of energy, space, and time, all of these come out from a rational, logical approach to the heavens and the earth. Mostly we get our science from the earth. Maybe not so. Maybe it's more like half and half. Maybe it's more like you can't have one without the other. That would match everything we know about the universe. That whenever you find one thing, such as energy, you've also found something else that you may be overlooking. In the case of energy, we're very comfortable in saying, here at my institute, energy exists in space. Okay, where does space exist? That's a very good question which I alone have been able to answer using rational logic and the scientific method to discover, what does space exist in? What is space? Can we see space? You might say yes, you might say no. But in order to understand anything, we're going to have to define space and its complement. What is the complement to space? You brainiacs of the modern generation may say time. Well, you're not the first to say that. About 5 to 7 generations have been saying that the conjugate of space is time, because it is thought that Albert Einstein discovered that. No, he didn't. He made a mistake, and I will be showing that to you again, as I have innumerable times before in the past 4 years, that space-time is an illusion. It only makes cryptic sense with the calculus, and then you can fly around the solar system, which we do. That is, the governments do. The governments are in outer space. Using Albert Einstein, the Swiss citizen, the citizen of Switzerland named Albert Einstein, that man led science off of a cliff. But his discoveries were enormously valuable to Satan. Satan must have inspired Albert. And that sounds like it's a cut against Albert. Not so. No, everybody gets deceived by Satan, or you wouldn't be human. You would be an angel, or something superior to a human. Is it possible to be human and be perfect? Well, our Lord Jesus Christ says so. In fact, he demands it. You have to be perfect if you want to enter the kingdom of heaven. He gives some extra advice. You want to be perfect? Try becoming more and more like a little child. Well, that's why I'm here. I'm very childish, and I'm a child at heart. So I'm all set to give you the truth that our Master Yeshua, whom you may not have bowed to yet, it looks like the Islam people are kind of hesitant about bowing to Yeshua, the elect one, on whom their entire religion is based. So do I have a bug up my bun against Islam? Nope. I am Islam. Do you get teachers in Islam? Well, you might. I say yes, because I've met several of them. They're the wisest people I've ever met. So Islam certainly is on the side of science. They're rational, logical, religious people. You may say, oh my God, that's a contradiction. Well, oh my God, right back at you, so are you. So yeah, you're not pointing the finger at anybody who's trying harder than you. You want to get critical? There's the off button. You can be critical. Go find a mirror and talk to yourself. I'm here to teach Islam. I'm here to teach Christianity, and it's all about the elect one. So that is the basis of religion, that man. Nobody in heaven or earth can deny what I just said. That alone is Islam. Is it based on a more basic principle? Yes. The same one that Yeshua said, and he's the elect one. Whatever he says goes. So does Islam disagree with Yeshua? Not in the case of the most important commandment of all, which is the first commandment. Actually, the first two. Actually, the first three. And then you will say, if you're wise, what about maybe all 10? Oh yeah. There's a reason there are 10 commandments, but I've stated, and not without reason, that only 2 are new. That's the one about God's name in the Israeli language, which I discovered from the Tetragrammaton. No one else has, but I have. And the true Sabbath, which nobody cares about or ever will, except for me. But I'm here to expose the truth of heaven. The Sabbath certainly is a beautiful, marvelous, miraculous truth, which nobody in 3 religions, if you count Judaism, the Christians and the Islam people, don't give a fuck about the 4th commandment. They also don't care about the 3rd commandment, as if they never even heard of it, as if Moshe never said it. Was it Moshe? No. He was told what the commandments are, so they're the direct words of the ineffable Creator. So what did he say are the 10 commandments? The first 2 are about worshiping nobody and nothing. You don't worship anything or anybody except the one whom you cannot name. That one is above all names, and that's probably his best name for humans in general. He's the one whose name you'll never figure out. So don't name him. Oh, but once you get to the 3rd commandment, what are the first 2? Worship only God. No idols, nobody else. Just God. That's Islam, and that would be Christianity except for something that Satan threw in. And this is the part that I warned you, you Protestant Christians, particularly in America, but really anybody, Catholic or Protestant or otherwise, whatever cult you're part of, the LDS or the SDA, you're off track, you've gone astray. That rhymes like Cassius Clay. Okay. So what actually is the 3rd commandment? Thou shalt not take the name of Yahweh Elohim in vain. You will not use that name randomly. You will treat that name and only that name with the highest respect. I happen to know that name and its meaning. Nobody else on the face of the earth could care less about the 3rd commandment except me. Now I think you understand why I may sound a little pretentious, precocious, perhaps overbearing, perhaps megalomaniac. It's on your behalf, maybe to my own harm. You will never pity me. You will certainly never correct me. You won't even interrupt me. I have a duty to do that is sacred. You don't yet. I am trying to guide you on the path to heaven where you will find your own purpose. I've already found mine. It's none of your business. I share it because you need to know who I am. Otherwise, you may not be able to trust the source. Well, you don't need to, and I never say that you need to trust me. except when I have to, because I'm the only man who knows certain things from heaven, which you want to know whether you realize it or not. Why am I guiding us into the cycles of nature? Because I've discovered through my own research the answer to one of the most vexing questions that's ever been asked about revealed religion, which is simply this. Since you say you have the transmission about the elect one, who are those people? They're the Israelis at first, which was not everybody, and then the Ismailis inherited it. They're the Islam people. And what did they get? They got the transmission that has the information you need to blow your mind and undo your mind so you can please your Father and go to heaven the way He intended. Why is that not happening with you? You need insight, wisdom, you need revelation, if that's what you want to call it, but you need something that you have not yet found. You may think that you've smelled it, tasted it, touched it, you came close to it once. Either you ran or you never figured it out, or you made something up. By far the most common reaction is to make something up. So you can wake up tomorrow morning and not be schizophrenic. The cycles of nature are what keep you sane. So that's the beginning of our canvas of the field of the cycles of nature. We now have two binary classification, and I promise to tell you the third. There are three classes of cycles of nature. The cycles that we call astronomy and celestial mechanics, studying the motions of the things in the sky that are not part of Earth, including and starting with the moon. The moon and the sun, then the planets, then what are called the fixed stars, and then everything past that. Those cycles, they're enormous, aren't they? Well, the lunar cycle is the closest one to us, so it repeats about once a month. There are several cycles invested in the lunar cycle, all worth knowing, because then you start to get direct insight into the way you understand anything, which is geometry, which in this case would be the geometry of the spherical universe, where everything is spherical, and the way we see spherical motion is on a circle, and that's called a cycle. And that does not occur in space. Where does it occur? In energy. Energy is cyclic. Energy is cyclic. Position has no sense of cyclicism. There's no circle involved in position, unless you adopt my geometry and mathematical system to support it, in which case you will proceed rather rapidly past the mistakes of Einstein. The mistakes that Einstein bequeathed to white science. White science is now relativity. I will show you where relativity fails. Okay, so stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in. This is the beginning of our series on the cycles of nature, beginning with the astronomical cycles, turning to the cycles of Earth, which include the weather patterns, of course, but also the chemical cycles that support the ecology, with billions of inexplicable cycles that science has never penetrated because science is now white. All right, so we'll be giving you the other side of science, the part that white, Einsteinian, science, European, American, capitalist, imperialist, godless, rootless science with some insane ideas about millions of years. Now men are talking about millions of years cycles, including the cycle of the whole universe. Even one of my teachers, Sir Roger Penrose, has gotten in on the action so that he can put in his worthless 2 cents. I'll show you the truth of everything in the heavens and on the earth. And then the third category, the intrinsic cycles that solve the theory of everything and give us the grand unified theory. and unite all the forces so you will see everything that composes the cycles of nature, both in heaven and earth, so you can determine your position in the I Ching hierarchy. Where do you stand right now? Are you on your way up or are you on your way down? You cannot stay stationary. This universe is continuously moving and changing. Are you? You'd better. Stay tuned. This is Anagalactic bringing you the Cycles of Nature, which I have given a tentative name, which I would enjoy comments if you would like to suggest something or just say anything about my name for this new science. Holi, H-O-L-I, which means oneness. Holi, like holism, that means a unity that's composed on a conjugation. That's holism. It's always a conjugal relationship in holism. Depends on the context what is meant. In the case of the universe, it's space energy that takes the place of space-time. Space-time is a distinct error. Space energy is the right solution. I've proved that. Stay tuned for that cycle. That's in the third category, the cycles in geometry. That has to do with what is called and not understood angular momentum. Momenta are not positions. They're on a closed line. You can't measure distance in the alternate universe that is conjugal with the universe that you can see and sense. There is another universe that's infinitely bigger. Thank you very much. We'll be right back. This is Anagalactic on the 18th day of October, a Saturday, what I used to call in some videos the old Sabbath in jest. And we would like to talk about the Sabbaths, which are part of the cycles of nature. So the cycles of nature is the topic we address today. And in order to make this holistic, multidimensional, we will attempt to enact cyclicism as we proceed. In other words, we're actually going to experience what we're studying, which is appropriate in the case of cyclicism or What is a cycle? Well, we're going to talk about what is a cycle, because if we're going to talk about the cycles of nature, it sure would be nice to know what we mean by that. So we'll also have to talk about what is nature. So these two words seem to go together quite naturally. I don't believe I've ever encountered any exceptions among the notoriously fickle human race and their opinions on anything philosophical. When you say the cycles of nature, all ages, all races, all societies, tongues, kindreds, groups, and whatevers, societies, cultures, everybody, man, woman, and child, all of us, dumb and brilliant, dimwits and wise people, we all fully understand, to whatever common degree is available, a most unique understanding of what is meant by the cycles of nature. Why would that be so? It pretty much defines our environment as such. Like whatever you know is probably involved with cycles of nature. For instance, day and night. But in the modern age, you could also say matter and energy. Well, energy would be cyclic, we've talked about that, and matter turns out to be pretty much energy. So we have cycles at all scales. We also have the rotation of the universe, which has never been directly perceived, discovered, measured, or really geometricized, because it looks like it doesn't rotate. Because if it did, it would have an equator. It would have an axis and an equator, which are dual objects in a setup for a cyclic phenomenon. The easiest of which to imagine in the geometric sense is a rotation, because it's a cycle. That's why the words cycle and circle almost sound alike. It's because they're exactly the same concept. So a cycle can now be visualized. And the first cycles we see may or may not be directly visualizable as a rotation, but one of the major examples of the rotational aspect of cyclicism, that it is a circle, is the moon. When you look at the moon at any age, at any time of the month, statistically, you would have to say, because the moon disappears sometimes, doesn't it? You've heard the myth of the dragon that eats the moon. Well, that is simply a metaphor for something in a physical cycle. So there are several circles that intersect in the phases of the moon. But what I want to say to kick off our study of the cycles of nature, wouldn't it be nice to have a primary example to which we refer as we proceed into a huge realm? It turns out you can pretty much summarize everything, even as we do, oh, everything is really energy. That's an overstatement, which would cancel out about half of science if it were literally true, because that means there's no such thing as matter. It's just energy. Well, maybe. Because what's the basis of cyclicism? What makes things go round? It would be a fair answer to say energy, because the universe was injected with energy. And that's indeed why it is possible to assert, provably mathematically, that the universe is just energy. Well, then you would have to at least get somewhat philosophical and say, energy where? Because energy, where is it? It's in space. So those are the two fundamental components of anything that's going to be cyclic, or maybe innately is cyclic. How about the whole universe taken as one unit? That would be the uni in universe. So a verse. What does verse mean in universe? Let's look it up. All right, we have advanced search here in the Google search window for universe space definition. Let's see what we come up with. Here's the top hit in my current preferred top of the list. This is from Oxford Languages, and I'm going to expand this a little. All right, that's just to make it readable. All existing matter and space considered as a whole. The cosmos. The universe is believed to be at least 10 billion light years in diameter and contains a vast number of galaxies. It has been expanding since its creation in the Big Bang about 13 billion years ago. Wikipedia here has essentially the same information, which I'll just read quickly. The universe is all of space and time and their contents. It comprises all of existence, any fundamental interaction, physical process, and physical constant, and therefore all forms of matter and energy, and the structures they form, from subatomic particles to entire galactic filaments. Well, my goodness, and then it goes on to give the dimensions and the known age and the fact that it's expanding. That is considered to be a fact by those who establish facts. You may realize that as a scientist, you actually have to make sure that those facts are established, no matter how many men claim to have discovered something. You have to check. So we're not going to go into the age of the universe, or whether it's expanding or not, or what its dimensions might be. Because there's a severe disagreement at the highest level about the answers to any of those questions. And so we don't want to get involved in psychotic guesswork. That really defeats the purpose of studying the cycles of nature, which actually do teach us something, unlike white scientists. So to go to whatever color is the universe of cycles, it's probably unrelated to the white race among humans. Because I don't think the universe actually lies, and I don't think the universe is confused. Well, men do lie. Systematically, at the highest levels, men are the ultimate deception artists. And that's proved by basically certain religions, I'll just say, that have evolved on Earth, and the evolution of science out of dirty old England, down by the dirty Charles River, where all disease originates, and all diseases of the mind, apparently, because that's where we got millions of years theory. The millions of years theoretical framework of the white race. It is the white race that came up with millions of years. You know when that began? It was only 2 centuries ago, almost to the day. You can find out exactly the day. If you dig down deep enough, you actually have to go back before Darwin. Darwin was overjoyed to hear about millions of years. There should be a name. It's a philosophy. It's the philosophy of millions of years. If you have millions of years, you can really change the course of philosophy and science and religion and change the face of the earth and the mind of man and the course of destiny. If you can actually make that work, that millions of years is the new definition of reality. That was invented exactly 2 centuries ago, not by Darwin, nor his, it was a tie, but really Russell should have gotten the credit, because Russell developed his theory before Darwin did, and then they had a race to the British presses. It was really a race to the gallows. If it had been a century earlier, they both would have been hung by the neck until dead for challenging the Anglican Church, which does not believe in millions of years, because that would defy God. Is that true? No. The Anglican Church is made of just as big a bunch of deceivers and liars and nincompoops, really satanically possessed jackasses, as the scientists themselves. So they were both racing to their own gallows to be the first to come up with the ultimate deception to just enslave the earth, whoever gets hold of that power. Well, the Christians tried, and it looks like they got Europe for about, between 1,000 and 2,000 years, just screwed Europe with false Christianity, obviously not what you would want. If Christianity is true, what you get is false Christianity, you're probably fucked. Well, that's the story of the white race for the past 2,000 years. Ever since Europe discovered Jesus, first they turned him white, and then they made the world's biggest dictatorship using the Pope with a white hat and giving out the body of Christ, because Christ is God, and therefore since Christ is God, and Christ has a body and it can be turned into a cracker. I saw that in a Star Trek adventure. If you reduced the human body just down to its basic salts, basically you just got all the water out of it, it'd just be this crystal. It looks kind of like you could just carve it and make crackers. And that goes to Soylent Green. They're eating people. That's Charlton Heston's second most famous line from Soylent Green. They're eating people, because you're eating crackers every week that the government gives you. Charlton Heston found out the government was just using corpses for the green crackers. And what was really tragic, they were also going to make the orange crackers because they had just run out of cows. There were just these, pictures of don't worry, they're cows, but it's actually just corpses. Because people are dying like flies. They're just scooped up immediately and sent to a meat packing plant where they're made into crackers. So, whatever that means, we are studying the cycles of nature, and our bodies are recyclable. Does that mean we're dirty, filthy animals, or we're basically mineral forms that have just randomly collected ourselves into something that can watch itself die? We just kill each other? Do you have any answers? Well, you're not alone. But there have been some attempted answers because we have to live, we have to produce more children, God only knows why. This is kind of like the confusion which your education system is supposed to get you out of. Well, I think you just found out from Wikipedia and Oxford, the sources of the English language, I guess, in terms of looking anything up. Where would you go? You go to Wikipedia, you go to the Oxford Dictionary to see what universe means. Well, we just found out that nobody knows what it means, but we're sure willing to just make up anything that pops into our heads. So nothing has changed since the Earth was founded on 4 tortoises, apparently standing on an endless Zeno's curlicue of turtles that goes down, down, turtles all the way down is famous. Turtles all the way down, well, you ran into Zeno's paradox, so you better make up something about a bunny rabbit, a coyote, the old man in the sky. Just make up something. It's the angry celestial being that's just shaking a celestial fist at us all the time. Well, that's really to keep the kids in line. It's time to get your soldiers activated. You need to go kill, 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 because that's what humans do to each other. And it's your turn, because you just achieved puberty. Well, here's a sword. Here's a bow and arrow. Learn how to kill. Here's a picture of the ones we hate. And oh boy. And what do we know about the universe? I would just guess from our behavior. Probably not much. Well, you check in Wikipedia. I'm certainly on safe ground by saying, no, it looks like there's no wisdom on Earth anywhere. Just a bunch of knuckleheads that might as well be minerals. They might as well be monkeys. Who cares? So what is the universe filled with the cycles of nature? Oh God, who cares? So we'll be back in the next video. I'm just depressed having to describe, well, who's trying to figure out the cycles of nature? Well, these naked apes who've been around millions of years and yet can't figure out a goddamn thing about the universe. These are my people. This is my race. I'm this species, apparently. The universe is expanding. I just say, no, it's not. Whom do you serve? It's Satan. Yeah, I looked into it all my life. These fuckers that have just been lying to everybody for as long as they can get away with it. It's part of Satan's plan. And then because I was looking into certain sources, I guess I found out. But don't worry, because Satan was invented by the designer of the entire universe. And so Satan is just an optical illusion. Yes, it's killing all the humans beings. Already has killed half of them. It's going to get the rest shortly. But that's not the end of the story. You got to see beyond that minor distraction. Are you going to die? Well, maybe that concerns you. Maybe it doesn't. My parents are already dead. I've mostly forgotten they ever existed, except to honor their memory, because of course I do. But other than that, they're gone. They're not coming back. They vanished. They just fell off the back of the ship, and the rest of us are sailing on. One day I'll be in the back, and then I won't be. Nobody will notice. Maybe someone will go, eek, we lost Sam, and then, well. They're just one of the 8 billionth, the 8 billionth victim of this death planet. As for going to the stars, oh sure. Just like, anything else we make up. Oh yeah, we're going to the stars. The aliens love us, obviously. Oh, they'll be here any day now, those aliens that love us to death. Now, what's going on? Cycles of Nature. So that's 17 minutes. I'll be back shortly. I'm hungry. My stomach is growling. I actually hope you didn't just hear that. I'm on a diet, and it just makes me ornery, and so I'm depressed. I'm going through a cycle. Well, women know about cycles. Well, you think like men don't. We have cycles too. Really similar, except for the bleeding. I mean, actually, it's not really the same, is it? Well, how did males and females of the human race, if they did evolve, How come the evolution was coordinated between the females and males? It's obvious that the reproductive system is coordinated, but they certainly aren't the same. We celebrate the difference. I mean, women are definitely not built the same way as men. At a level that would have to be controlled by speciation mechanistics, and that's absolutely impossible. Oh, no, not according to the white magicians. Oh, the white mathematicians that just spawned out of the sewers of England and spilled over into New York. Oh, these white geniuses are certainly right. Oh, if the universe is expanding, well, let's hear some more wisdom. Like, that's ever going to help anybody understand anything. There's actually a really nasty story about why that's such a popular model. But it has to do with mass murder and just capitalism, imperialism, mass murder, genocide. There's another more wars. Just endless horror, just don't fix anything. And that's why we study the cycles of nature. It's so we can not read the newspapers and end up putting a bullet through our heads and fuck it, blam! Always have that option, I guess, but I don't really feel like talking about science in my miserable state of mind right now. Hey, the world is not exactly the same thing as the Earth. And the cycles of humans just ends up with dead babies. We'll be back shortly.